I'd like to call the Facility Committee meeting to order. It's October 6th. Noting that all the board members are present for that committee, as well as members of our maintenance team and our administration. So I need approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I've received no public comments. Rebecca, anything coming? Okay. So the first item of the agenda is an update on our new middle school, the contingency tracker.
Yeah, and just before we pull that up, so we continue to attend meetings at the job trailer every couple of weeks. We do continue to receive positive news on the middle school. As an example, we are committed at this point to running summer school 2026 at the middle school, which does open up the existing middle school to whatever conversations we're going to end up having about high school planning, and including discussions on the existing middle school. So we're thankful the timing is working out to be able to move summer school over there. As far as like change orders, Rebecca, if you want to bring up the contingency tracker. We do continue to receive very positive feedback regarding work at the middle school. We have not had any significant discussions as of late regarding any financial matters. Basically, as an example, I mean, this summer we talked about the outdoor space. Dr. Brown's talked about the fencing, but other than that, there really just hasn't been anything of note to report. That continues to put us in a positive position moving forward for conversations that we want to have around a variety of topics, which can include the tax levy, which was an agenda item for the budget committee this morning at 7:30. It could include work at like the high school potentially in the summer of 26, but it gives the board a lot of flexibility to have conversations moving forward about what to do with referendum funds. So we're in a really good spot at the middle school. We'll continue to keep us updated. Dr. Brown, did you have anything from any of the meetings you wanted to share?
No, I think we're good to go. The meetings have been seamless and great conversations, and we're moving in the right direction. So it's good for now.
Okay. All right, so that's the middle school. So for the approval of the capital maintenance request, if you don't mind, I was going to ask John to provide an update on the robotic technology first, because he does have a request on the agenda. When you previously approved the 1 unit for the high school in Heritage, you did ask to get a report on this technology, how's it going, how's it being used in our building. So I thought this was a good chance to share that information. You know, what have we purchased to date, how's it working? This has been an area of interest for John's, as he has a technology background as well. So Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind pulling the information up on the screen regarding this topic, and I'm going to turn it over to John.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. So yeah, good morning guys. I just put together a quick deck on where we're at with autonomous equipment. So today we'll just talk about what we have currently deployed and maybe some planning for future requests. Our first robotic lawnmower was approved in January of 24, but we paused that project. There were some technical issues that we had with the equipment that was shown to us, demoed to us. It was a smaller unit. It would have worked fine, but it only had like a 10-inch cut or something like that, and it was kind of slow, and it had some garaging issues. We wanted it to put itself away automatically and go into the fencing automatically, and it didn't work out the way we wanted it to, so we paused that project. The second item was our robotic sports field painter, and we do have that in service, and that's working great. We have a robotic vacuum at Heritage, and we have a new robot floor scrubber at high school. So we'll go through each of those here on these next slides. Like I said, the first robot mower had a 10-inch cut, and it didn't really allow for the tech that we had hoped for. So we moved on with that and paused that project. The second one I mentioned, sports field painter, it's working very well. We use it for those items listed there: lacrosse, football, baseball, softball, soccer, discus, shot put, and for fun runs. The lacrosse drawing there, it's really beneficial for lacrosse because that thing is hard to shape geometrically by hand. So the robot is really fabulous there. This is a picture of the robot vacuum that we have at Heritage, and we run that every day. It's been working great. And this is the robot floor scrubber that we just put into place at the high school. There was an equipment issue that is being resolved and some mapping issues with the software that have been resolved. So we're just now still getting into the groove with this machine, and it should be working great. It is working great. It's in service. So one of the requests we're talking about today is an Exmark autonomous mower. So we had one of our partners come out and demonstrate this mower to us on the JV softball field. It worked fabulous. It was really fast. I have a video down below that shows the demo from the guy from Waunakee Power stepped in front of the mower and it stopped instantly and started up again. It's not the best video because I took the video, but you get the idea. So this machine though is 60 inches cut versus 10 inches. So it's really fast and does a great job, and it's gas powered, it's not battery. So there's some of the features on that. It's also stand-on capable, so instead of garaging it automatically, an operator does take the unit out of the shed or garage, deploy it, set it up, and set it on its way. Now, when it's doing its thing, let's say again, JV softball, one of our operators can be weed whacking around the batting cages or even watching it from another mower up on the hill. So you don't set it and forget it. You don't run it overnight. You stay in the area and do other work that needs to be done in the area. Keep it in check. Although it's very hands-off. It did its thing and it was beautiful. So here's the video. Let's see if that runs. That's okay. It just shows again the Waunakee Power rep stepped in front of the mower and it stopped, and then he backed out of the way around 20 feet. Once he got about 20 feet out of the way, it started up again. So it does super straight lines. It's really a nice, fast machine. So some of the planning I'm thinking about is the new middle school, along with the mower, is the new middle school, another floor scrubber, and then smaller floor scrubber units at Heritage, Intermediate, and Prairie. So what I'd like to do is get make sure the bugs are out of the system for the new high school scrubber, and then hopefully proceed soon with the 4 schools for the additional scrubbers, and then the lawnmower. So I do have the lawnmower on today's request.
John, how often do you use the scrubber? Is that a daily use?
It's going to be every day.
Every day you do something.
That was the point with the robotic scrubber, is the custodians don't get on it every day. They don't scrub every day.
Right.
In the cafeteria, yes, but the hallways, no. So the autonomous scrubber can allow us to do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
Keep the floors a lot cleaner in the building clean. Any other questions on any of those?
Rebecca, can you go back up to the recommendations from John or request for planning? So as a board, I'll just point out probably an important decision that's going to be coming up in the spring budgeting process is really the custodial services for the new middle school. The entire team that is at the existing middle school will go to the new school, obviously when it opens up. That team is not sized for the square footage of the new school. So the new school is significantly larger than the existing school. One concept that I think that's interesting to explore is the idea of using this technology once we have some of the bugs worked out at the high school to see how we can stretch the ability of what our current staff can do. Again, if you have someone who's able to start multiple of these, start multiple of the vacuums, can you stretch, I would say, the traditional assignment of square footage for a custodian? I don't know the answer to that, but I think this robotic technology allows us to at least explore the potential, because absent this, John's already done the math. When you just look at the square footage of what a custodian covers, we would need to request multiple FTE for the transition from the current middle school to the new one. What crosses my mind is, could we instead invest in technology so that an individual who could be trained could start multiple vacuums, could start a scrubber, maybe 2 of them, maybe utilize the technology that's continuing to improve instead of expanding additional custodians. And as you know, with custodial staff, we have had a lot of turnover. We have obviously folks that take time off, sick time, et cetera, et cetera. One of the advantages of this technology is once it learns the path, just one person has to start it. So the question I think that we need to explore is, would investments in this type of technology allow us to alter our thinking for how many adults we need at the new middle school? John might say no, because he's done the math on the square footage, but I do think the more that we can explore and use this technology and get better at it, the more we have the ability to learn to find out what they can and cannot do, which should, in my mind, be a part of our discussion. It may not eliminate the need to add, a person, as the building is so much larger, but maybe it would allow us not to add 2 people, as an example. But ultimately, in the end, John has shared that with Dr. Brown and myself, because there's pretty standard data on what the square footage is that a custodian 1 FTE should be able to cover. But I will say that traditional data doesn't take into account this type of technology. So I do appreciate that John brings this background and is willing to explore this. I do appreciate this committee's willingness to begin exploring this type of technology. I do think in the end, this is where cleaning is going to, basically replacing tasks that can be completed by robotic technology. I think we're doing the right thing by trying to be on the front end of this without necessarily buying 20 units and just going from one extreme to another. I like the approach we've taken. I did go to the high school. John did invite me for that initial training, and it's very impressive technology for sure. I was immediately trying to imagine how at the new middle school that could help us. But I think it's just something we have to think about as we learn to use these devices. John has 1 up there for the middle school. I also think we are going to want to explore vacuums. We may want to explore more than 1, depending on the first floor, second floor type setup. But I think in the end, we're moving in the right direction in this space. I think we want to continue moving in this direction. And I think it should be a part of our analysis of what should we think the square footage that's appropriate for a custodian to cover. How does that change if we are introducing this type of technology? And maybe it doesn't, because there's more windows. There's a lot more that needs to be cleaned, right? So maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just lets people focus more on the things they can do while we have the robots focus on what they can do. But I do think it's an important part of the conversation moving forward.
The windows are a great observation. I'll add, For example, at Heritage, the furniture is very different. The furniture in the cafeterias are very different than what we have at Prairie, for example, where all the Prairie tables slide up into the wall. At Heritage, all the booths and tables are on wheels, but it doesn't go away. So my idea for Heritage, and I shared this with the new head custodian, if a human can move the tables and chairs in the cafeteria, set the robot off to go, it does its thing while they're moving furniture in the other 3 cafes. When it's done, move the furniture back and let it traverse to the other cafes. Really, that's one of the biggest challenges at Heritage is the furniture that doesn't get out of the way. So super helpful at Heritage in my eyes. And then you're right, there's also the glass.
That's what I was thinking. Glasses.
So John, when you think of that furniture and we are getting into the part of the middle school, buying furniture, I hope that you kind of oversee and look at the effect of the furniture on your crew.
Absolutely. The type of furniture definitely comes into play. At the high school, you guys may or may not know that those large tables fold up and they can put them in the cave. Arboretum, and if we could do all schools like Arboretum and Prairie, that'd be great, but it just doesn't work like that anymore. The hidden things. We have too many tables.
And I wanted you to see this first because John does have a request. So you saw earlier, he mentioned pausing the initial project on robotic mowers. I will say I do also appreciate that when something's not right, John has always come in and said to me, like, this isn't ready, I don't want to do it, is that okay? Even though the committee approved it, I'm always like, yep, if it's not ready, let's not do it. So you'll see in the request, so Rebecca, you could bounce out of this, and you can jump into the, you can jump right into the request, the sheet, yeah, right there. You can see that we did indicate, yeah, in parens, Nicole put that in there for us, the in parens, 22K approved in 23-24, so those funds were never spent. So they've been on the list going all the way back, but they just weren't spent. So what you see in the unit price column is the difference between this machine and the 22K that was already approved. So it's significantly more expensive, but it's a significantly better piece of equipment. So what we have on the list for this month, we have some standard pool maintenance items that we're requesting. The next one down, Nicole, if I remember correctly, I think that's for the intermediate school, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, the cardio room maintenance. So the interesting thing about the intermediate school cardio room, you have to go way back to when the school was built. So the board approved the cardio room at the intermediate school as a partnership between allowing it to be used by staff across the district and that school's PE needs. So all the way back to when that school opened, I have paid for one of the preventive maintenance visits every year from the perspective of the staff use of it, and then the building has paid for the second use of it. So going back to 10 plus years, I've always split the costs of the equipment, the maintenance, et cetera, with the school. But what we have now is the individual, the firm that does the preventative maintenance provided us with a pretty detailed report that identified all of the equipment that should be repaired and which one should be replaced. So the repaired items are pieces of equipment where our preventative maintenance firm basically said, don't buy new because the current products just aren't as good as the way they were made 10 years ago. Like I think treadmills was an example. Repair them, don't replace them. Because what you buy today you're not gonna like it, it's not very good. Then there were other items that they said it's not worth repairing, you should consider replacing them. So I put the entire request list together. I was working with Mike Minter on this, who does manage the cardio room for us. We don't necessarily have to move forward with a $26,000 investment. If we wanted the investment to be smaller, we could do that, but basically $26,000 will refresh the entire space with a combination of replacement and repair. And really, if you think about it, it's, you know, the school opened up in the fall of '26. We're approaching 26. I mean, it's 10 years old worth of equipment, basically.
16.
Thank you, appreciate that, the following year. So appreciate the clarification, but basically, yes, we're getting to the point where we need to do something with that equipment. So we're putting the entire list out here for your consideration. The next one down, I'll have John talk about the IBOP and the lawnmower. Scott can join us to talk a little bit about the basketball. If you remember, we talked about that last month, and Scott was working with Nick on that one, but I'll turn it over to John to talk about the next couple.
Can I just ask a question
course.
on the cardio maintenance? How does the use of the whole district staff compare to use just by the school? Is it utilized by our staff?
I know there's staff members in there daily.
Okay.
I would say it's a small but dedicated group. Yes.
Okay.
So it is not widespread use. I would say even as time has gone on, as people retire and new people come on, there's probably, I would say, probably new staff don't even know that
I
there's
wondered how it was
people who go there.
advertised.
Yeah, I don't think we probably do a great job of advertising it. So I think if you were around, you just know that people can go there. So I don't think we probably have regularly, you know, communicated too much about this. So I would say we definitely have a group of dedicated individuals who use it regularly. Is it widespread? No.
Maybe it's something, do we still have a wellness committee for
No.
staff? Hmm.
That kind of fizzled out because we just didn't have a lot.
But we have a
interest.
Brian, right?
Yes, we do. Yes.
Where's our Brian Gabarsky? He needs to kind of, well, that's a real, it's a nice benefit for staff, but I just wondered really the use of it. Yeah, okay. That's all.
Sure. The IMOP handheld scrubber, it's simply a vacuum and scrubber, a smaller unit to the custodian operates to replace one that's really not in good shape at the high school. It's, I think, 20 years old. So that's just a replacement piece of equipment. For smaller spills, for example, in the cafeteria, if a student dumps their milk onto the floor, it's easy to grab this unit, and we had looked at a demo of that, and that was real nice. So that's just a piece of equipment. The Exmark 60-inch lawnmower we already covered. Stanley Magic Force operator and card reader is a door 7 item, and Scott and I can both handle that one. But when we walked through to look at card readers and ADA wave sensors and buttons for our handicapped students and staff, this was just kind of our observation that door 7 is highly utilized at the high school for some of our special needs students. And that door does not have an automatic opener, so that's why we took that one on.
It's probably the most used door by special needs kids.
So I wanted to get that one on there. Questions so far? And the 6 PCs is simply an IT item that we need to update those machines. I'll let you take the basketball hoop apparatus.
The basketball hoop apparatus, as from the last meeting, Joan asked us to go back and look at, because I said it was going to be between 100 and 150,000. Well, I got 4 quotes on new, and this quote, we sat down and talked to Nick about it quite a bit, and Conrad, and this is what the one we came up with. We liked the product and the people that will stand behind it. We like that. more than the other ones, so this is what we went with, 108,000. It's through, if I can say, it's through Badger Sporting Goods. They will work with us if this gets approved. The old ones are 21 years old, which are getting to their life end. Now you can say, yeah, some could last a lot longer, but these hoops are up and down every day. So we've been told that we need new. So this is what we came up with.
Scott, is there a life expectancy, actual guarantee on the product? And then you mentioned that they're willing to work with you until the system.
Yes, and that's the big, that is the big thing. When I try to get service on the existing ones right now, they're through a different company and they do not back up their product. But yeah, they sell the product, but they don't come out and fix them if need be. And I gotta go through another party to even try to get it jimmy rigged or whatever to fix, you know, it's like, but the life expectancy, I don't really have it's around 20 years. I don't really have
Are they all about the same?
yeah, but you know, then you can look at, well, we've never replaced anything like that in the old gym. Oh, that's a totally different machine in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally different. The piping, the apparatus and everything on the ceiling in the field house is what I've been told is it's narrow pipe, it's thin pipe. Things are starting to just wear out and go bad. So that's why we're looking at all.
Narrow pipe and thin pipe for the support?
Yeah. There's bigger stuff out there, I guess. And,
So did you mentioned in the last meeting, with this one you're going with, kind of what we currently have, there's a lot of operator error.
There
So
is.
this
Now-
kind of, are there more fail safes in there where that is not happening?
The switches for this one would not be on the wall. Nobody can touch it. They have to have an iPad or something like that. So yes, a kid won't be able to walk in there and just start putting the hoops up and down, up and down. You gotta have the iPad to even operate it. So it will be more fail-safe.
At least more control. But
More control.
You'll still have, and that's gonna be up to whoever's, allowing, oh yeah, you can have this. But can you, because it seems like you could just mess that up, like doing it incorrectly. Is this the same sort of thing, or or are there limits in there where it doesn't allow you to?
There will be limits that will stop the machine or stop the hoops from raising. Yes, there are limits. Now, what we have right now, if you keep your hand on a button or a switch, that sucker will go all the way up and try to keep going, but it can't.
And then you say there's iPads and stuff like that, and I'm getting in my head, well, every year we're gonna have a yearly maintenance on software and all that kind of stuff that isn't figured into the price. I can envision that being the case, do you know?
I don't know that one.
I think what's also important too, as far as the maintenance of it or the longevity of, how much time will we get out of these is, my ask would be that our adults only manage this hoop system, right? So to your point, no, I can't hand my iPad to student A and ask them to let the hoops up or down or whatever it's gonna do. But we can certainly look into the software upgrades and see what that might bring.
Yeah, I would have to make a phone call and find out.
Good to know.
It's not stated in the proposal, but you're absolutely right. This 7-year-old iPad, we don't support that anymore. So.
Yep.
That's always true.
Yeah.
So with that mower, that's a $50,000 mower.
Mhm.
And I appreciate, Steve, what you're saying. I think things are definitely going this way, and I like the approach of analyzing that. I think the analysis needs to be really it's not a best case scenario, it's like, this is what's gonna happen. And not say, oh yeah, this is gonna save this amount if everything works in a perfect world. It's trying to, I don't know how you're analyzing it or making sure that's happening, but if we are going forward with it, I guess we should have a very good, very methodical approach to making sure that, yep, our data's good, this is going to save us that much, or it's, you know, it's not just, well, it could do this. And that, because we know how that kind of happens. Like, yeah, we said we were gonna get this, but in reality, no, if the guy he puts in place and he's still you know, whatever it is.
What is a 60-inch more not robotic?
About a third of the cost.
Okay.
Do we have, like, since we are going to have this new middle school campus, like, is there a mower that's currently being utilized at the high school that can then, like, be moved over there? Or what is the, like, what do we have for lawn mowing equipment right now? And
We have quite a fleet of mowers. 60 inch is about the smallest we have out there, and then we have a 12-footer is used for the big sports fields. So we have mowing for each school. That's easy for us. With the softball fields and baseball fields, this thing can cut it twice, so it can create patterns, which the baseball and softball people like. Not that that's a requirement, but does cut it very nicely. And keeping it within the confined area of the fencing, I thought would be a good idea for us to try to latch onto the idea, and everybody understands it's safe. And so for the schools, though, we run those with a person on machine, a very large machine.
okay.
Can you explain so I'm totally clueless on the technology of identifying or mapping out of everything. Do you give it, here's the parameters, and like, how does it work? Explain that process.
Sure. When we did the demo at JV softball, the operator stood on the machine and did a circumference of the field. He cut the circumference of the field, said, I'm done, now fill in. And I want the lines to start here, north and south, for example, and it went and it cut it in about 22 minutes.
So then that's stored. He does it once, it's stored. If we don't, it's like
Stored forever.
it's already figured out, go ahead and do it.
Right.
If there's an obstruction in there now, like you have something going on, maintenance work that you can't cut around this area, does it have to be you gotta re-identify things, or?
If there's an obstruction it sees, like a person or a bag or a bat or something, it'll go around it.
Yeah.
It does have a vision about that big. Anything taller than this, it'll see. Taller than about 4 inches. But yeah, if there's a permanent obstruction, you can still let it go. It'll just go around it.
Yeah.
So on the basketball hoops, if we approve it today, are we looking at
Next summer. I would have to work with Nick and Jen to figure out time, because that's gonna be a longer event.
And does Badger install, or does?
It's actually Badger works through H&B, and I really don't know a lot about H&B, but I tell you what, they came in, they pointed out everything to Nick and myself, and we just touched, his name is Dave Winkleman, and he works with Jeff Howard at Badger Sporting Goods quite a bit. They have what is called a Garrett system, and what we've used in the past is Porter. Porter does not help us at all.
But they take care of the installation.
H&B takes care of the installation and everything.
All right. Any questions on the list before we vote? So I would take a motion to move this on to the full board on Monday.
So moved.
I second it with that, I want some real numbers to show that this is doing what we intended on doing, like I said, I like the approach. And this is in reference to, obviously, the basketball hoops, you made that point, I think that has to be, no problem with that. It's that mower, it's just, it's an expensive piece, so I want to make sure there's some accountability on that.
Would you put that in service yet this year or spring?
The lead time we may have to push it to spring depending on the lead time. It could be 6 weeks.
Could be snowing in 6 weeks.
So, I'll second.
Seconded. So there is a motion and a second with follow-up on that information that Chad has requested. So all in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for the research. All right, so we've done the robotics and moving on to high school planning.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what has been going on since last month. So, as you know, the facility committee did approve an engineering traffic study at the high school. So that study is being led by Roxanne Johnson, who's the civil engineer who has done the work at all of our new schools. And also the traffic study is being done by the same firm we worked with at other schools as well. So the initial work did take place. Dr. Brown did work to coordinate a communication out through Annie because big cameras went up and she thought people would wonder what was going on. So we did let everybody know at the two properties what was going on so that the cameras were up. They did record quite a bit of footage of what was going on at the property, and now they're in the analysis phase, but we should have a final report by the middle of this month from taking a look at it. So they're going to get really good information. We'll get a really good report back as far as the possibilities of what could be done there. And again, the main purpose of that is just to look at safety on the site itself, keeping in mind next September. In the interim, administration continues to work with our partners on both the September 26 planning process as well as the longer term planning process. So the update that I want to provide is I think it's just important to note that as we continue to work, it's really a two-pronged effort, and we're trying to make sure both of these prongs are making sense with each other, and I'll give you an example. So while it would be ideal in September of 26 to replace the current family and consumer ed space at the high school with a commercial kitchen, we cannot know for sure that that would be the long-term permanent home of family and consumer ed. So we continue to communicate that we're not looking to make investments in the short term that would not connect with our long-term planning. Sometimes that leads to difficult conversations because, as an example, in family consumer ed, starting in September next year, we're going to have a significantly higher quality facility at the middle school than we are at the high school, which is not ideal. But we're communicating that we would like to see if we can implement a new teaching station at the high school, which would mimic the same type of instruction that can be done at the middle school, absent the commercial quality, kitchen equipment. So as you know, at the family consumer ed, the main teaching room at the high school has basically residential equipment that was put in during the 2004 referendum for the high school. So it's 20-year-old equipment in there, and it's more residential. But we understand that until the longer-term planning process has determined what the plan would be and where the long-term home would be, we're not comfortable investing that kind of money in a building or in a space that we don't know will be the home to family consumer ed. So with that being said and done, we're trying, as we're going through this process, see if there's like an opportunity to improve instruction with a temporary measure, which we view would be like a better teaching station that the students can view what the instructor's doing, which we are going to have that at the middle school. So we are targeting the November board meeting to put in front of the board concepts for September 2026 that would tie into the longer planning process. And at that point, we're going to be asking for approval to move ahead with obtaining pricing. So I'll give you an example of the type of decisions that we're going to ask you to weigh in on. So if you think about the existing middle school for a moment, and when you all had a chance to walk through there, we did share with you that the existing music space, so the existing middle school music area, has the original gym for the middle school underneath it. Those walls were built up in the 2005 referendum for the middle school. And one thing that we would maybe want to ask you, could we get a quote next summer to tear down the walls and just open that whole space up for athletics to have a weight room moved over there? Now, we wouldn't be asking you to fund the type of weight room you do see in other schools. We'd be asking you to fund creating the open space. That would allow the programs to consider what would it look like to move the weight room from the high school over to the middle school and do the type of fundraising that typically would occur to see some of the equipment that you see in other schools. But that would be an example. We could get a quote on what it would take to tear down those walls if you're interested. So during the month of November, what we're planning to do is bring forward ideas. I'll give you another one. Another idea is to move the wellness clinic out of our rented space in the community. It's not that far from here. And to move that into the existing middle school on the south end. There's a couple classrooms there. There's an entrance there. I think it'd be perfect. But we would have to go out to the market to get quotes on what would it take to turn like 2 classrooms into more clinic type space. There's no question the short-term costs of doing that are going to exceed our annual rent, right? So it's not good. We can't convert 2 classrooms into a medical clinic for the $30,000 that we pay right now. It's a question of, does the board feel like if investing, let's just say for discussion, $200,000 into a wellness clinic, and so you'd have it paid off in like 7 years, does that make sense, or do you want to continue renting? But if we don't ask Epstein-Ewan to draw it up and get the price, you won't know the answer. So there may be things that we present to you that you would say, yeah, we want to see what that looks like, or there may be things that you would say, no, we don't want to see what that looks like. So those conversations are occurring right now. Basically, the areas that we're focusing in on is the entry to the middle school from the high school and creating a secured entryway there, creating an office where there could be an adult that continually supervises the coming and going in and out of that building. Potentially the music area. We know the high school wants to use the family and consumer ed area. We are having discussions about a department moving across the street, which would then free up at the high school. Every teacher would have their own classroom. We are looking at high school having access to the commons area. We're also having conversations about if we move a department over there, the furniture that's there is age appropriate for 7th and 8th graders, but not 9th through 12th graders. So we have to take a look at that. But what we're intending to do is bring this information forward in November. This committee is not slated to meet in November, so one question for the 3 of you is, Do you want to meet in November, and do you want to look at that first before it goes to the full board meeting, or you just want it to go to the full board meeting? And so just wanted to give you an update. We are targeting November. We are targeting bringing concepts to the board. We're looking to get your feedback on really yes or no on going out and basically turning it over to the team to get pricing. Ultimately, in the end, the one thing to keep in mind is when Epstein Ewan designs something, we do have to pay them whether or not we move ahead with the project. So that's like 6% of the cost. And then obviously the Vogel part, we do not have to pay them. We either choose to do the project or we don't. So you would be committing to some costs. While minimal in the scope of the project, there's still real costs. So we would not want to ask them to design something that in the end you're like, I don't want to do that. It's better upfront to tell us you don't think you want to do that than spend the money. So as an example, if the whole board wants to continue renting the wellness clinic, we should just do that. It doesn't make sense to have EUA spend the time and the money designing one if we don't want to do it. And that's fine either way, whichever way we want to go. But we want to definitely take a look at that. Another example is, we're now renting space across the street from the wellness clinic for an alt-ed placement site where we have intermediate school kids. We can continue to rent, or we can look to bring those students back to the middle school. Specifically, we have special ed spaces at the middle school that we think would work very nicely for the program we have currently rented space for. So that's another example of a discussion, is moving that program back into the middle school. So again, we would save that $30-some thousand in rent. We don't think there's a lot we would need to do there actually, because there are already special ed rooms. There's a kitchen there. It's probably minimal investment. It's just committing to doing it would be one thing. But that's the discussion that we're looking to have in November. So I think the main question for this committee is, do you want to see it first? Do you want to have this committee meet in November, or do you want it to go right to the board and just not meet at all during the month of November?
I think it makes sense for this committee to meet. I feel like the questions we ask here and the discussion that happens here typically leads to like a more productive full board discussion.
But the questions we'd be asking here are going to determine that direction, whether we want to, and I feel like, well, we're going to have it, we're going to make the determination, and then you go to the board, and it's like, why didn't we go forward with that? I feel like it's a full board thing.
I feel full board, as long as we don't have agenda items at that time that prohibit the discussion that this is going to prompt.
Right.
We have to be sure that that meeting in general allows for this. And I have to agree that I think it's forming direction, and I personally like waiting the whole board.
We can do that. And in addition, you should also know Steve, Annie, and I have a meeting at the high school, or we're planning for a meeting at the high school very shortly to bring the high school staff to apprise them of where we are in the process. The last time they heard from us was March. We were on Capitol Hill. Steve and Annie were over at the high school. So we just want to bring them up to speed on where we are in the process and help them understand that what was initiated in this conversation in terms of the ideas around a wish list, right, have now been condensed into a myriad of conversations we've had where we've laid out what are the needs versus the wants, right? As we take a look at teachers having their own classrooms, as we take a look at increasing academic achievement, as we take a look at what's the longevity, what's the long-term outcomes we want for our high school as it relates to hopefully not being able to come back for a long, long, long time. And you'll have some asks, I'm sure, in the interim, but the idea is to create that high school space in such a way that we will not have to come back for any major ask, considering also declining enrollment as well. So those are all factors and pieces of the puzzle that we need to consider as we move forward in this process. So you should also know that that's coming up as well.
One other thing I forgot to mention, I'll throw in there right now. At the board retreat, you gave us direction that not to continue with an athletic master plan as its own thing, but to incorporate the needs of athletics into the picture, the planning picture. So Nick has been working since then on prioritizing the needs for the athletic program. So that is also happening. So a good example of that would be, just as a reminder to the board, when we committed to moving varsity softball across the street to being behind the middle school, we invested in quite a bit to turn that into a varsity field. But towards the end of that investment, the decision was made to have an athletic master plan and really try to hold off on any work on the entire high school athletic field. We never finished that project, meaning there is not a press box and concession area there like there's for baseball. So we're bringing that back and saying, okay, so remember we didn't finish that. And then secondly, some of the other discussions that have taken place around the lack of shelter, bathrooms, et cetera, on the field itself, we're going to bring that back. And ultimately, in the end, that's why we want the entire board to weigh in. So a good example, when we talk about like the softball field, you could give us direction to say, yes, we want that as a summer 2026 project. There's obviously no chance that'll be ready for the spring softball season, but it absolutely could be built next summer and be completed once the season ends. So that's another example of the direction that we're looking for. The finances related to all of this also is super important because, as you know, we've been sharing with you, and it's in the agenda for this meeting again, the capital maintenance tracking. We've been sharing the middle school, the funds remaining at the middle school. We've also shared at the high school as an example. The board held off on things like the changing room at the pool, the capital expenditures in the older part of the building has been held. The funding that was designed to turn the upstairs space of the second floor of the high school into a LGI type space, that was held off on. So ultimately, as a board, you're in a position to be able to decide what's the most important things to do.
Steve, as you kind of lay this out for that board meeting, thought that I have, which you may have already considered. Instead of moving our consumer, our face group over to the middle school, because that particular curriculum is the availability for our kids is defined by the space. And I know we have kids who are turned away every year. So we're looking at potentially tearing down the oldest part of that school. The kitchen part, I mean, that is part of that oldest part, so both of those rooms. If we're looking at relocating a department like social studies, they're in a part that wouldn't be touched. Would it make any sense to include what would a new space department look like in a portion of the school that's not going to be addressed? Because we have older equipment and we don't have that commercial kitchen. And that is so crucial to that department. Like, could it be moved like across from our current guidance? We have a string of rooms. I mean, I'm just throwing that out thinking, I don't want to do anything at the middle school because we know that that's not going to be the end home. But instead of waiting for that end home, if we're going to relocate a department, relocate a easy to move department. Not that, I'm not minimizing social studies or English, but they're easier to move than face. And begin that conversation of where could face fit, and could we fit it sooner than that complete renovation?
Right, so you're saying try to find potentially the final ending home for
Yes.
family
Right.
consumer and now as opposed to waiting.
And, it's just a curricular concern for kids.
Mhm.
And kids have a lot of interest in it, and, anyway, if you could just kind of throw that into the
Yeah.
mix for our design team.
Yeah, I would say we've not done that because we've tried to say in all of the conversations that we don't want to invest in anything
And I
that may
get that.
not fit into the big picture.
Yeah.
So we've tried to focus on temporary moves instead. But that's something that we could certainly throw into our thinking to see whether or not that would or would not be possible.
Yeah.
I think in the end, the only challenge we would be faced with is if we did, again, hypothetically, at some point, put a referendum out there to rebuild the oldest part of the building, which is over 50 years old. You might see some very ideal uses of that space being wide open windows where you might relocate a library, family consumer ed, and a few other of those very visible spaces. In fact, we've seen some family consumer ed spaces that it just changes the entire environment because of the windows. Now, everything would benefit from windows, but it would preclude that. That's
Yeah.
the only concern, is you would be permanently moving that into some other location without the same
Right.
opportunity maybe as other spaces to potentially move over there. So it's why we've tried to hold off on it.
Christopher.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry, just a quick question for this committee to discuss further in the future that Steve brought up that I think is really important. We talked about Nick doing a good job of highlighting some of the needs for sports and athletics. One of them that came up, as Steve mentioned, was like an athlete center. Just being cognizant of, with soccer, softball, there's no bathrooms out there, literally a porta potty, where you'll have 20, 30 girls in the middle of summer using a porta potty. Nowhere to get water out there as well, like literally nowhere to get water. Parents are going to like Quick Trip to try to refill water bottles. Plus, we've had 2 instances, one just a couple weeks ago with varsity soccer. Last year, we had JV and varsity softball get caught in a hailstorm. There's nowhere to shelter out there, even remotely close. Like varsity was in a concession stand, and I heard the opposing team was literally in a shed right during lightning. So just for this group to consider, I think that athlete centers would really need a safety component. Plus, it just provides some essential needs as well, just as we look to continue that discussion.
Yeah, and what Chris is saying really does, I would say, dovetail with the work of the budget committee to reduce the tax levy this fall. All of this is really connected, because ultimately the budget committee has an option to look at prior debt, which was financed over 15 years instead of 20. Budget committee also has the option to look at equity that's available. Budget committee also has the option, we'll talk in just a minute about the $1 million check we just received, which truly can be used by the board for anything. Ideally, it's a one-time expenditure, right? You ideally do not use the $1 million on something that's continuing. So right now, we are in a financial situation where the board is able to make decisions with flexibility. And so it's important to really tie all those things in together. And we did talk this morning that the budget committee has the ability to recommend a reduced tax levy this fall without having to make a decision this fall on how to do it. There's a variety of options to give us more time, which I think plays into the point Chris was making, who was in the meeting this morning. So that's the good news coming out of the budget committee this morning, is there's an interest in reducing the levy back to where it was, which will be well received in the community. But secondarily, buying us some time to decide on the refinancing versus the equity versus the savings from the middle school versus the $1 million check that we received. All of those things are on the table for the board to consider, and we're going to do the best we can to tie all these things in together. If any committee members have thoughts about the high school, like Joan just shared, that you want to get to Dr. Brown and myself, you're welcome to. We'll take it back to our planning group. Joan, we'll still take that back to the planning group because maybe they have an idea, someone might have an idea. But in the end, because of the concern over instruction with family consumer ed, I would like to at least see a teaching station similar to what you see at the middle school, which does allow the instructor to present in a totally different way to the class. That would be a huge improvement. Now, again, the appliances are old, but the instruction will be using the same methods we're using at the middle school, which would be nice to see. And that doesn't require a significant investment in the room. That requires that teaching station.
The one other thing I wanted to bring up, which I haven't heard about yet, is the clock bell and speaker project, along with the milestone project that has to go into the middle school. I mean, I got preliminary numbers for clock bell and speaker the other day, and it's up there.
Yeah, what Scott's referring to is the infrastructure itself at the existing middle school. Of course, we've held off on that, right? So if you think about modern clock bell and PA systems, we have them in every building now. So the board approved the completion of that work at Arboretum this past summer. So if you walk through Arboretum, you're going to see the same thing you would see in our new schools. All of them have a modern clock bell and PA system. We also now have the modern security camera system, all of them. We've held off on the existing middle school. So as part of the conversation, of course, we'll be bringing that to you as well. There's different ways to communicate, of course, between the high school and the middle school. There's ideal scenarios, which the ideal scenario is you're in the office at the high school, you want to communicate, you communicate over the PA system in both buildings, hear the exact same message at the same time. That is possible through the new modern systems that we have. So absolutely, that will be part of the decision-making process as well at the middle school. The one thing to keep in mind about the existing middle school, as long as we use that building for something, has a purpose in the district, you're going to want to have the modern technology in that facility, like clock, bell, PA, and security camera. Whether it's a wellness clinic, whether it's an alt-risk program, whether there's 4K kids, whether there's high school kids in there, no matter who's in there, you would want the same modern technology you have in the other buildings. So it's just something to keep in mind, and that is something we will be presenting to you. And Scott's been working on getting all that information with Rick as well. So we're going to present a lot of information in November. Appreciate the discussion on bringing it right to the committee. Dr. Brown can work with board leadership to decide if you can carve out enough time in November to do that, and then we can go from there.
Thank you. So do you still want to do the clean energy incentives?
We're all three in the back of the room at the end of the budget committee.
I was kind of,
Oh, okay.
I did not hear that part.
Oh, okay. Rebecca, would you mind bringing an update, please? So if you want to go to that same slide, Rebecca, that showed the program moving forward. Right here, perfect. So as you are all aware, we've been participating in energy incentive programs available through the federal government. We did receive our first payment for Heritage, the Heritage property. The legislation was amended this summer with the final legislation signed by President Trump. What you have in front of you is the changes that were made through the legislation. So the most significant change is really in the solar space. Solar is being phased out as far as there being federal incentives. But I do want to assure you that we have met all of the requirements at the middle school. So the middle school has a very significantly sized solar system going into it. The project is, I'm going to say, basically done. So the system is there, it's all been constructed. The new requirements only indicate that you have to commence construction by December 31st. Well, we've done way more than that. So we've gone way past starting construction. And then we have to have the system actually turned on and usable by July 1st. So I've already started talking to Vogel about getting the system fired up and ready to go. So we're going to be in great shape at the middle school. Ground source heat pumps, otherwise known as geothermal systems, that's where the board was faced with a difficult decision regarding prevailing wage and going for the full incentive versus going for the 6%. That program has remains in place through 12/31 of 34. So we will receive a very significant payment back from the IRS for the existing middle school. So the good news is all of the incentives that we originally laid out for the middle school are protected. Moving forward, we would need to assume that a solar project could not be commenced in time to meet the federal requirements for reimbursement. That's just the reality of the change that took place. There's always incentives available through the state, but as far as solar energy, we just need to assume at this point the middle school, intermediate, and heritage were successfully navigated through the system, but anything in the future would not be. Geothermal is a very interesting conversation for us to consider. I think as we move forward with discussions regarding the high school, it would be an important conversation to have as to whether or not having a geothermal-based heating and cooling system at the high school would be in the best long-term interests of the community. The high school would be a complicated conversation because it can be done multiple ways. One way it can be done is only with the square footage that's rebuilt. So that's a common approach that's taken. And then another approach would be retrofitting, which would be much more complicated. But either way, just know that if there is a discussion about having a high school project that starts by 12/31 of 34, there is the ability to consider geothermal federal incentives, and they're going to be there for a while. And then we also shared the reimbursement check that we did receive. Rebecca, would you go towards the front of the presentation?
Steve, do we have any opportunity in the EV charging?
Yes, we do. Yeah, the dollar amounts are very small, but yes, we do. You want to scroll down a little bit? You want to keep going? Right there. So just to confirm for the board and really the community who may be viewing this presentation, this part of the presentation was done by a nonprofit group called Undaunted that we've worked with for a few years. Elective pay allows schools to receive cash reimbursements when they install eligible energy efficient technologies. And the one thing Sarah enforced when we did this presentation last week is school boards are the sole determiner about what to do with the money. So if you scroll down, Rebecca, a little bit to where we showed the check before, one of the most unique things about this program, and keep going, so right here, so this was the first payment that we received back, but one of the most unique things about this program is the school board has sole determination of what to do with this money. We don't have that happen all that often. Typically when a grant comes in, the grant itself is telling you what you need to do with the funds. This was intended from the early onset of this program to be a cash reimbursement to public entities really for the first time ever. So as Chris mentioned before, this check is part of the analysis for the budget committee. We've deposited it, but none of it has been spent, and it won't be until the board decides what you want to do with it. So that's just being held to the side, and we will continue to hold it to the side until the board makes a determination with what to do with this. So, just a quick update on that program.
Thank you. Okay, I think that ends our meeting, so I would take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you very much, everyone, for attending.